Hey, good Tuesday evening, everyone. State Representative Brad Halbrook here, along with my colleagues and leaders, Leader Chairman Miller, Leader Freeze, and Senator Leader Chesney. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here on this Tuesday night live stream roundtable as we recap Veto Session. Tonight's live stream is brought to you by the most expensive veto session in the history of Illinois. You know, like they said before, a former senator from Illinois said, $1 billion here and $1 billion there, and all of a sudden it starts to add up to real money. So, gentlemen, veto session, about $11 billion plus or minus, depends on which numbers you count, but it's been quite a veto session last week. With that, Director, let's go to our opening slides and let's get right into it, and maybe we'll have a little time for some closing comments here if anybody has anything left to say. And so maybe if we can see that first slide, let's just do this. Here we go. So we're going to talk about veto session, and let's get into our first slide. Energy. Uh-oh.
Oh.
There we go.
Pull back on the reins.
We must have an electric vehicle as fast as it's accelerating here this evening. So with that, energy legislation, SB 25 became the vehicle bill that contained a 1,000-page plus amendment. There was about 4 amendments back at the last week of May. And then as we went into veto session a couple of weeks ago, amendments started flying, different bills the amendments got attached to and the like. Ultimately, the amendment to SB 25 became the bill. Let's go right to Leader Chairman Miller with your thoughts on what happened on this energy legislation.
Well, it's almost like that the dangerous Democrats were having a race to see who could pass the most egregious legislation that actually kneecaps and devastates the citizens here in Illinois. Almost everything we did over the weekend is devastating to business, to families, and to communities. And plus another interesting caveat is this all happens after midnight. Where I come from, I always told my kids that nothing good happens after 10 o'clock, and I'm thinking maybe 9 o'clock in real time. But this deal here that they passed during the middle of the night will increase your electric bill by $8 billion. This is a green energy scam, and it's not green and it's not affordable, but the Democrats continue to double down on stupid and prove that they are extremely low IQ when it comes to energy policy.
Right. Exactly. Leader Freeze, and then we'll go to Chesney to kind of wrap up on or throw your thoughts in on SB 25, the energy bill.
Oh, it's just getting to be ridiculous. Everybody knows everybody's energy bill went up this summer. Everybody knows why. It's a supply and demand issue. They keep taking coal and natural gas offline. Well, that obviously lessens the supply, so your costs are going to go up. Nothing that they've done increases the supply side of this equation. And that's why, again, we're going to have an additional increase when there's any kind of demand. And obviously you're looking at July and August of next year that it's going to be outrageous again. So, I hate saying this to our fans out there, if you will, but buckle up, because it's not going to get any better anytime soon.
Right. Exactly. Senator Chesney.
Yeah, the Democrats again showed that they're room temperature IQ, and they doubled down on stupid. And as Leader Miller, Chairman Miller said, and this kind of is a continuation of the Green New scam that they passed a few years ago, and so now they're trying to move around the chips and trying to show motion and activity, and then hope to sell this idea that they're going to lower anything. I would task people that are watching this, or maybe share this with your friends and family in Illinois or throughout the country. Give us an example where the Democrats have ever lowered anything. Everything that they do is they want to increase the costs, and they call it courageous. It's not courage to raise people's taxes. It's most cases stupid. And in this case, they're going to raise everyday people's electric bills. And then they're going to try to sell this as that the panacea of change, and it's not going to change anything but your electric bills. And unfortunately, folks, they're going up.
Yeah,
Exactly.
the only time that they actually really try to lower the cost of anything is if they subsidize it, and then it doesn't really lower the cost of anything because that's my money and your money that they're spending to subsidize some scam again. So, they may help out an individual constituent, but overall the costs go up because they're taking our tax money and they have a huge administrative state administering whatever program they got, and there's fraud, waste, and abuse in there.
Right. Leader, Chairman, and then I'll finish up before we move on to the next topic.
Well, this whole deal is a complete hot mess, and I know that after decades of being in business, the hen house over in Arcola, Illinois, which if you've gone through Arcola, odds are you stopped at the hen house for a sandwich or bacon, eggs, or something. But they announced yesterday that they were closing, and a lot of it almost all of it, from what I read, has to do with the high cost of doing business here in Illinois. And I mean, I don't understand the mindsets. It reminds me of Obamacare when they said, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan, and that Obamacare is going to be cheaper. And we all know experientially that we couldn't keep our plan, and it raised the cost of health insurance unbelievably. And it's the same way with this deal here. The other night, I think one of them said it was going to lower electric bills by $160, or that we had to raise it before we could lower it. I mean, all kinds of nonsensical stuff just to prove our point about them being low IQ legislators.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The bottom line is this is an $8 billion battery storage bill that will be an additional line item on your energy bill. There has been in the past 4% caps on this charge. They got that bumped to where they can add 1.65%. At the same time, they put unelected bureaucrats at the Illinois Power Illinois Power Agency and the Interstate Commerce Commission. They have put them in complete control of this effort. And guess what, gentlemen? Guess who appoints those people to that board? The governor does. Yeah, what could possibly go wrong? So our hope is that we could get a Republican governor. But the point of that is, if that money is not enough, well, they just don't even have to have any caps. They can pull all the caps off and charge whatever they think they can get by with to fund this green new scam. It's just amazing. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about this a lot. This is the third major iteration of a bill. The FEJA back in 2016, CEJA in 2021, and now CERJA, CRGA, whatever that acronym stands for. I think it really stands for, it's code for, hey, hang on to your checkbook. The bills are going to get higher. I think it's what it really stands for.
I think it's a code for the replace Bohica. Bend over, here it comes again.
All right, let's go on to the Chicago Transit bailout. This was a little less expensive for the citizens of the state of Illinois, but still rather expensive. Leader Freeze, weigh in on what happened here with the Chicago Transit bailout.
Well, there was a lot of back and forth on how they were going to raise the funds to bail the transit out. There was package tax, there was internet streaming tax, all kinds of taxes that they were debating. At the end of the day, I think what happened is those taxes were squashed by the governor because, one, he's running for re-election as governor, and everybody knows he's actually campaigning, for president the next cycle. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, what do we get? We get a toll increase for everybody who drives around on the tollway up in the Chicago area. And they swept funds from the road fund, that gas tax, ever increasing gas tax that goes up every, July 1st. Yeah, they decided they were going to sweep those funds to avoid hitting us with another tax. So now if we need our roads repaired, those funds aren't there.
Yeah, exactly. Senator Chesney, you're up in Northern Illinois. You probably use the tollway more than the rest of us. A 60% increase gives them another $1 billion to work with. My understanding, this will amount to another $1 billion a year on top of a $1.72 billion deal or their budget. they come to us. They had a $771 million problem originally that they knew about 4 or 5 years ago was going to happen. They'd worked it down to about 200 million. And now all of a sudden, we're going to give them these massive amounts of increases and other bailouts. What's your thoughts?
Well, being courageous is telling the lobbyists and the special interests no. And in Springfield, the Democrats never do it. They have unfortunately mastered the art of making a majority of the constituents at least tolerate what I would argue should be intolerant behavior of passing these tax and fee increases on to working men and women in our state. In this particular case, the lobbyists won. You only know that because our the viewing areas were packed at 4 a.m, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't packed with concerned citizens. They were packed with lobbyists that are going to benefit from these increases. And so, Speaker Welch and President Harmon, they do the victory laps. Well, they just screwed the taxpayers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they did. I just don't understand how any downstate Democrat, let's forget the national level. Let's forget that for a second. How you could vote for Governor Pritzker or any Democrat? How could you ever? I mean, they're forcing you to pay for something that in many or most cases you're not going to use, and they sweep the money of which we were told. And this is why in 2019, I don't think Representative Freeze was here. Hallbrook and Miller was certainly there when Leader Durkin tried to get Republicans on the gas tax, and we said no. Right. But we still had 20 Republicans vote yes. This is exactly why you don't do deals with the Democrats, because there are still members in the legislature, in the House and Senate that voted for those initial gas taxes. And now what did they do? They're starting to sweep the money. And this is the beginning, not the end. And I would just say that it was refreshing to see 50 out of 59 Republicans stick together and oppose this. It should have been 59 out of 59, but 58 out of 59, which is pretty close. But this is why you don't cut the deals. And this is why you can never cut the deals with these Democrats, because they cannot be trusted. We need to hit the gas. Anytime a Democrats ask for bipartisan support, the only reason they want bipartisan support is to give them cover for stupid ideas.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. The gas tax doubled. It's automatically increases to inflation every July 1st. The fund had grown to a balance of over $3 billion, about $3.3 billion. It had incurred almost $200 million worth of interest. And I wondered how long it was going to take the Democrat majority to find this money, to find a hole for it. Evidently the constitutional amendment that was passed a few years ago, the lockbox for the road fund, evidently that's not the lockbox anymore. They robbed almost $900 million plus the interest that was earned on that. And that's every year, gentlemen. Senator Chesney, I think to your point, I think that's every year from here on out. So, and then the way the money's to be used, it's just robbed about $450 million for downstate roads ever again. I'm not sure how this is all going to work out. And I've got to feel something about those Republicans that are still in the General Assembly that voted for that. Wonder how they're feeling today about that, gentlemen. Chris, any thoughts?
Well, this is stunning information that the Democrats would lie to us about what they were going to do with that money and having the lockbox. And, it's how many times do they have to do stuff like this till our side of the aisle figures out that you don't know how, you don't know when, but you know that they're going to renege on what they told you they were going to do. And once again, they act like they're surprised when this happened. But to me, one of the most stunning things about this was it like you said, it sweeps the sales tax from the motor fuel away from the road fund. And something that I read in some of the commentary was that there's been a new transit authority, Northern Transit Authority established, which I think that you mentioned something about. All these appointees are appointees of J.B. Pritzker, so they're just going to be yes man to do his bidding. But the where the rubber meets the road on this is that the funding used to have a breakout of 45 to 55%, whereas the Southern Illinois got 55% and Northern got 45%. And now, according to the sources that I got, that number changes to from 85% up north, 15% down where we live. And I'm not exactly sure how they've justified that. I guess they can just do whatever they want to.
Right. And one more fun fact about that is that $450 million that was used for downstate roads and bridges that's now being sucked up, that's being divided 85-15. The 15 that we get downstate goes for transit. Doesn't go for roads and bridges, my understanding. Gentlemen, is that the way it is? Is there any closing thoughts or anything to discuss further on that?
Well, did you say transition or transit, or could you please define the terminology there?
Not roads and bridges. Anything else, gentlemen, on this Chicago transit bailout that is about $2 billion plus or minus, maybe a fraction over $2 billion to a $200 million problem? It's just Democrat math. Democrat math after midnight is hard.
Yeah, and one of the other issues, I think the transit authority never addressed their issues that they're having with transit. They just say we need more money.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding, they got buses that don't run on time. They got buses that don't meet up with other things. They got buses that are half empty if have anybody on them at all, because they were running pre-COVID routes, and they don't have the bodies, going to work downtown like they used to.
Right.
So there really needs to be an evaluation of mass transit in the Chicago area at this time,
Right.
I think.
Right. Let's move on to the next one. This is medical aid in dying. It's physician-assisted suicide. We saw this bill in the House back in the spring in advance of the Senate. Senator Chesney, you guys picked this up late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. Tell us kind of how the debate went over there on this particular matter.
Well, it's an awful bill that lacks transparency, that lacks guardrails, lacks a moral compass, most importantly. And, the Democrats really make it really hard to stay in Illinois. And one of the things that they want to do is for those that want to end their life, they want to accelerate that process. And the advocacy groups, the faith-based groups, we have a whole host of concerns with this from a faith-based perspective, but also, we don't want providers to be and insurance companies to be targeting vulnerable people and convincing them that there is a faster and less expensive path to end their life. And so it's just a bad deal, which is kind of reflective of why there was only 30 votes necessary, the exact number of votes needed to pass a bill. And the Democrats have super majorities, and there's some Democrats that are very concerned about this. A lot of minority Democrats, African-American Democrats that are concerned that this bill will unfairly target people of color. And the advocacy groups and the faith-based groups have their reasons for their opposition, but they were united in being opposed. But again, these bills pass at 3-4 in the morning. You have real no ability to debate this in the public, and where constituencies can start to call legislators and start to have their voice heard. And they do this intentionally. They do this all in the name of therapy and or providing options, and they have all their liberal talking points. But they want to make it easy to tax people in Illinois and then easy to end your life, and it's very unfortunate. Yeah,
exactly. Councilor Freeze, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but I guess a question I might have is, do you think we'll see anything nefarious down the road? This thing will be misused to some extent. But
yeah, and that's exactly what I was thinking. I didn't think this was going to get brought up during veto, but here it is. There's a couple things that concern me. Is first and foremost, if say you've got cancer, you go on hospice, and you try and get that covered through your health insurance. The provider now might say, you know what, you're terminal, so instead of providing hospice care, we're just going to end your life today. That's one of the things that is a real concern of mine. I don't know if you guys remember when this ran and passed on the floor. The other side cheered I mean, they were applauding and hooping and hollering like this was a great day in the state of Illinois, and it made me physically ill listening to them applaud this. This is not a good bill. This is something that should not be applauded at all. You know, and the other thing is, so you got somebody who's, suffers from chronic depression, and that person, because he or she's depressed, you go to the provider and say, I want to end my life because I'm chronically depressed. Are they going to give that person the suicide pill? I don't know. I just, again, like Leader Chesney said, zero guardrails. This really is horrible legislation.
Right. Leader Miller, I know you may have some thoughts on this. I just kind of wanted to open it up to you before we move on to the last subject. But there's a huge moral issue here. There's a huge spiritual issue here. I'm not sure what you might have to say about it, but I just want to get your thoughts real quick.
Well, I think that my colleagues have done an excellent job of covering the thoughts on this. But like you do say, it is a spiritual issue, and there's it's a battle between good and evil, and evil never retreats on its own, only when it's confronted by a more powerful force. And so we need to rise up and stand up, and the life lobbyists need to continue to let their voices be heard. And I mean, that's all we can do is tell people the truth, and and they got to make their decisions.
Right, exactly. Gentlemen, let's move on to the last subject, and we'll just go back to Leader Miller and then Leader Freeze, and then close out with Leader Chesney on this particular matter about these restrictions that were put on ICE. And then with that, Leader Chesney, once you're done, we'll just close out for the evening, if that's okay. So if you got a closing thought as you make your thoughts here on this ICE business, we'll go and do that if that's okay. And Leader Chairman Miller.
Well, I think that J.B. Pritzker and Brandon Johnson are missing a great opportunity to actually, after years and years, decades of crime rotting the city of Chicago, had a chance to be heroes by welcoming President Trump to come in, and ICE and Tom Homan and all those guys, and actually begin the process of cleaning up the city where it's where it's a shining star of the Midwest. And I mean, it's unbelievable, but all of the illegals in our state, and some of the numbers that I've heard is up towards 550 million illegals. And what we are seeing is more crime done by them, not less crime. And then, I mean, this is all predictable, but it's also all preventable by your attitudes. I mean, just 10 days ago or so, we had an illegal be charged with vehicular homicide on Mike and Gail Clayton.
Yeah.
And again, we want to extend our condolences to their family. But stuff like, one thing that I have never heard is J.B. Pritzker or Brandon Johnson apologize to any parents that have lost a loved one as the result of these illegals. Right. And these are not the finest coming into our country, but J.B. Pritzker continues to put illegals over the citizens here in Illinois. But one of the most stunning things to me was the lack of any constitutional understanding from the Democrats that spoke on this issue, because there was 6 or 8 or 10 of them, and they have no clue who the Constitution was written for, or the Bill of Rights. The Constitution and Bill of Rights wasn't written for people from Venezuela or Iraq or Iran, or pick your foreign country. Those documents were written for citizens of the United States of America that came in the front door, that did things right, and they have protections in place for them. Right. And so I thought that I would put it out there, because I know Hillsdale has free online Constitution courses, and I thought that it would be a good idea if we sent a flyer to our colleagues on the left side of the aisle. That, by the way, has their fearless leader shrouded the old portrait of Stephen A. Douglas, because they don't want to be reminded of what the Democrat Party stands for.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Leader Freeze, Leader Chesney, you may have to reclaim some of your time from Leader Miller. I think he may have kind of yielded or taken the liberty of some of your time. So with that, let's kind of put the wraps on this. So let's go Chesney real quick. Oh, I'm sorry, Freeze, and then Chesney, and then we're going to wrap up for the evening.
Yeah, just real quick. I have no idea how this is constitutional. I have no idea how. I mean, I haven't looked at this, researched this, but how do you keep federal agents, out of certain areas, off certain properties, public property? I mean, it makes no sense to me at all. Federal agents can go anywhere they want to go, especially public places. So I just don't understand. And last thing, I wish Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson were as upset with the criminals that terrorize the city of Chicago as they are with actual ICE agents. I mean, wouldn't that be nice that they got so worked up over actual criminals instead of, our law enforcement that's doing their job?
Yeah, exactly. Leader Chesney, you're going to be the final speaker for the evening on the final thought.
Yeah. Convicted sex offenders get 500 feet to stay away from a school. The Democrats thought they should make ICE agents do 1,000 feet. Just kind of puts it in perspective of how they view an ICE agent and our men and women in law enforcement. It's totally disgusting. They're out of touch. This isn't popular policy. If this was put forward on a ballot referendum, it would fail miserably. This is just repackaged, defund the police, and this is their 2025 version and must be stopped.
Yeah, exactly. And thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. IllinoisFreedomCaucus.org, IllinoisFreedomCaucus.substack.com / is the place to find us. And with that, let's close out for the evening with our outro music, Mr. Director, and like, share, follow, and subscribe to our content to help us overcome the algorithmic gods of the big tech overlords. Have a good evening, everyone.